Welcome to Between the Reads, a podcast about Black books. I'm your host, Audra Russell. Welcome to Season 3. There are so many great new things happening this year with the podcast, and I can't do it without your support. So please consider heading over to patreon.com/betweenthereads to join. Are you ready, Boos and Bros? Then sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Kiara Gaton's brand, Love Anise, is inspired by 2-year-old Nova Janae. Love Anise was created to empower and educate children and encourage literacy amongst the African American community. Love Anise's sole purpose is to provide our children with educational resources, tools, and merchandise that look just like them. Our goal is to ensure our children see, read, and experience characters that represent themselves. We believe representation matters, and the exposure needs to begin at birth. Kiara, welcome to Between the Reads.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. And did I pronounce your first and last name right?
Kiara Gaton.
Gaton, okay. I should have asked that before I started the show.
No problem. I get all kinds of things.
Okay, y'all. Listen, I understand. People, my first name, Audra becomes Audrey, Andrea, Adria, anything but Audra. So, okay. Right. So, Kiara Gaton, y'all. Okay? Yes. And I might just have to re-record the beginning of the show, maybe.
It's okay.
So, let's get right into this children's book, Loving Me ABCs. Tell our readers what it's all about.
So, Loving Me ABCs is a positive affirmations book, and it uses ABCs to teach children about self-love. So for every letter, there is a powerful affirmation, and embedded inside of the story is the definition of what the affirmation means. And so this kind of came about because Nova and I have done affirmations since she was born. So things like you're brave, you're strong, you can do anything. And so now she says them herself. She even tells me that I need to say them. So she says, Mama, you're so strong. You're so brave and things like that. And so we wanted to, since this is her brand, I wanted her to learn to share that with others so that she can empower other people. So that's where the whole concept came from.
Okay. And so the book is about a little girl and she's and her mom and she just talks about all the different things that she does. So the inspiration behind this book, tell us what it is.
The inspiration is Nova, my Nova, my star. I'm a single mom, and so I pour a lot into her. I want her to know that especially as a Black child, that she is worthy, that she can do literally anything that she puts her mind to. But most importantly, I want her to keep her light. And so I know that a lot of us as children, especially in the African American community, people somehow take that light away. And so by the time we get to teenagehood or adulthood, we're dim now. We don't have that light about us, or we have to find it or go to therapy or whatever the thing is. And so I want her to be able to maintain and keep that light as she grows so that it's just brighter by the time she reaches adulthood and she's spreading it all around, that Black girl magic and all the things. And so she was the inspiration, definitely the inspiration behind the brand and, of course, behind the book. Nova is love, and so she loves to spread that, and so she tells anyone, it doesn't matter the race, color of their skin, what they look like. If they're dressed in a dress, she's like, you're such a princess, you're so beautiful. And so I wanted her to learn to share that with other people.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned it, but we're going to circle back around to it. You literally gave the little girl in this book qualities for every letter of the alphabet. Okay. And I loved the qualities that you picked. Why did you pick them?
So honestly, some letters were harder than others. And so, like, for example, X is extra. And so X was hard, right? But I also chose extra. I think that a lot of people, myself included, are told, you're so extra, or you do too much, or you make too much noise, especially in our African American children and adults. And so that there's that angry Black woman thing that goes around. And so it was literally trying to challenge the thought of that extra or being too much as being a negative. I wanted to spin
Mm-hmm.
it and make it a positive thing because my daughter is extra. She's
Mm-hmm.
extra all the things. So she's extra
Right.
sassy, extra spoiled, right? So she's
Right.
just
Right.
extra all the things, but with that comes a lot of extra positive things too. And so I
Mm-hmm.
wanted any other little kids that are told that they're extra or they're too much to know that that's a positive thing. You can be extra
Right.
anything, and that just means you're
Mm-hmm.
more than enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's
Mm-hmm.
all. So that's kind of where that one came from. Let me think of some
Like
other.
you had creativity. You had my favorite was fierce. I loved
Okay.
fierce. Yeah.
Okay.
And gracious,
Yes.
honesty,
Uh huh.
just all these one resilience. That
Yes.
one I really liked.
That
Yeah.
was really important. Resilience was important to me because I need people to know that it's not when you fail or when you fall down. It's what you do after the fact. It's how you push
Mhm.
through. And so I
Mhm.
want to teach my daughter resilience, whether that looks like I didn't do so well in a game that I played, or I didn't do so good on this test, and that's okay. But it's what you do after the fact that matters. Like, are you going to study more? Are you going to
Mhm.
practice harder? Right. And so I felt
Right.
like that was something important, an important word. I also chose words that this book is, the age group is probably, I like to say starting as young as 0, just because the positive affirmations, they'll grow to learn them. But as
Mhm.
far as like kids that may understand or truly enjoy the book, is probably like 2 to 6, 2 to 7. But I use
Mhm.
pretty big words on purpose because I want parents to have to educate their children at the same time
Right.
as they read the book to them. So, mom, what does that R word, resilience, mean? And now we've learned a
Mhm.
vocabulary word. What is
Right.
gracious, right? Like, what does that
Mhm.
mean? So I
Mhm.
picked words like that are not words that we use every day on purpose, so that
Mm.
that could also be served as like an educational lesson for children to learn like the meaning behind a lot of these words.
Yeah, so you're making story time with the kids more than just reading a book, close it,
Mm-hmm.
okay. It's
Yes.
it's much more interactive and it opens up conversations
Uh-huh.
between the parent and the child. I really
Yes.
like that.
Thank you. That was definitely the goal.
Yeah. So, let's talk about the mother-daughter relationship in this book.
Okay. It's us. Like, it is literally me and my daughter. Um, One of my favorite illustrations, shout out to my illustrator Maru. She is awesome. One of my favorite illustrations was, I think it was assertive, where she's like, the kid is telling the mom no, and she's standing to her no. So mom's like, "Can I have a hug?"
Mhm.
And she's like, "No."
No.
And I
I
put
love that.
yes, because we as adults like to I gave birth to you. Why don't you want to hug me and things like that? But it's
Mhm.
teaching you a child to respect their boundaries regardless of who it's with, right? And so I
Exactly.
I have a social work background. I am a social worker, and I am all things children. So I work with children and adolescents. And so I learned, like, through my career and interactions with kids, that it's super important to teach them those boundaries, and that it is okay to be assertive. Say what you
Mhm.
mean and mean what you say, as long as you do so in a respectful way. And so I'm not the traditional African American parent, right? I'm all about breaking
Mhm.
those generational curses. And so my
Mhm.
child can tell me, "No, mama, I don't like that. No, mama, I
Mhm.
don't want to do that." And so
Mhm.
sometimes it's more of like, "Well, baby, we got to do this. Like, this is just something that has to happen." And other times it's a discussion, because
Mhm.
my 3-year-old talks really well. So we definitely have
Mhm.
conversations. And so it's a discussion as to, like, why don't you want to go with this person, or why don't you want this to happen? And so
Mhm.
sometimes I let her win, and she's like, "No, I'm just not with that right now." And I say, "All right, cool, got it." To teach her
Right.
that her opinion matters, her no
Right.
matters, she's important, and she
Mhm.
gets to say, especially I'm especially like that over, like, when people try to force her to hug them or interact with them, and she's like, "No." And whether it's family, friends of mine, whoever it is, I'm very strong on, like, she's just not feeling it right now, so no is no, because I don't want her to have to learn that later as a teenager, like, oh, no might mean yes, or no might mean this. I want it to be no means no, and to her to know that that's always okay. And so that was like something that was another way of, like, I tried to undo a lot of the negative connotations between with a lot of things. So, like, with the assertiveness, I tried to make it a positive, like, yeah, your kid is saying no, but they're being assertive and standing up for what they want or what they need in that moment, which is good. The same with like being honest. The illustration for honesty was like one where the child,
she was like, yeah, she's 2, and she was like, I'm 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much. Mom was trying to get that discount.
And we've all been
and she was like, no, I'm not. I'm 3.
Yep. And that's exactly my daughter. That is like, Nova's done that to me before, and I'm like, you're right. Okay. So it's a lot of, and it was meant to be humorous too, and just like parents that got it, because it's like things that you really go through or experience, and it's like these kids. But I want them to see that these things are not like, in the moment we might get frustrated, or it might take a little extra time for you to get through to your child, but it's okay, because some of these things are actually, if we make them a positive thing, they can be a really positive trait that goes into adulthood with them.
And it's also a protective thing. Like, I love the thing with the hug where she was like, no, because, you know, with my kids, when they were little, when we would go to family functions, I never forced them to hug anybody. And I never, if somebody said, oh, give me a hug, and my kids were like, no, and they're like, oh, she didn't want to give me a hug. No, she doesn't. Because if you're teaching them that, you know, they have to do something just because you say it, then if, you know, a lot of times, unfortunately, the molestation and things that happen, they happen with family members or friends. Exactly. So if my child is feeling something from you, because kids are much more perceptive, and if my child is feeling something coming from you that's making them uneasy, I am not going to force them to interact with you.
Exactly.
You know? So your book is really teaching these kids at a young age that self-love, and that I have a voice and I have boundaries and they need to be respected. And it also makes them less fearful. And if somebody does try something, they're more likely to come to you and say, this just happened. You know?
And I didn't like it.
It's important. Exactly.
And that was the goal. That was definitely the goal. So it has like a social work undertone. There are some mini lessons. Affirmations are something I do therapy. And so affirmations are something I do with clients in therapy. I love doing them with teenage girls, because society, again, dims that light. And so by the time you're a teenager, it's like, I don't feel so good about who I am. And so I use affirmations often. And so we actually, the plan for Love Anise is to build a brand that is full of these kind of books that are educational, positive, help children learn about themselves, help them learn about the world around them in a positive way. And so I think that I love that this was our first book, because it just, I am so in love with this book and all the things that it encompasses.
It's really beautiful.
Nova calls it her magic book. And so, and where she got that from, I don't know. When we unboxed a year and a couple months ago, she was just like, oh, this is my magic book. That's me. This book is magic. That's my magic book. And so it has been such a powerful experience to show her that she can literally do whatever it is that she wants to do, and to show her like how fun reading is and how great it could be to write a book. Like, she is obsessed with her book. She loves to read it. She carries it around all the time, and she sees it in different places. So like, she goes to dance class, and they bought and they bought a copy of her book, and they have it in their little library place. And so every time she goes to dance, she's like, there goes my magic book. And so other kids like flock to it when they're at dance. So it's been awesome.
Oh, that's great. Now, you dedicated this book to Black and brown children whose skin is seen as a weapon or a curse. And when we did our interview with my Black Ink blog, you said that you want to empower children so that society and others cannot tell them who they are, but instead they will tell society how they expect to be treated.
Okay.
I want you to unpack that a little bit more for us.
And so with like the whole Black Lives Matters and everything that we as the African American community have experienced over the course of my lifetime. And so I am in my 30s. So over the course of that time, I've seen personally and on a like national level how we are treated like we are less than or like we are intimidating just because of the color of our skin, but we don't get a choice, right? And I think that a lot of us would choose
Mm-hmm.
us
Mm-hmm.
anyway, but the point is that this is how we are born. And so our children are not seen as children. They're seen as potential dangerous people
Threats.
or
Mm-hmm.
threats.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. And so I dedicated that to these children because they're the ones that need to be loved on a little extra. And they're the ones that need these messages so that they know that any negative thing that people are telling you, that's not what you are. These are the things that you are.
Right.
And that just scratches the surface because you're so much more than these things, but that'll be a start to some really good conversation and you really believing like and saying like I'm assertive. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not loud and obnoxious. I'm just assertive and I know what I want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so um the plan is to so that if you have self-love and you tell yourself like and you know that you are worthy, you
Mm-hmm.
are powerful, you're smart, you're brave, like you're all these positive things. When
Mm-hmm.
society tries to tell you no,
Mm-hmm.
you're disrespectful or you're dumb or you're anything that's negative,
Mm-hmm.
you will then say like no, that's not what I am. That's what you think I am, but that's not me. You don't know
Right.
me, right? And you'll have
Mm-hmm.
a rebuttal to that instead of shutting down and internalizing those things and
Mm-hmm.
taking them in. And now you stop doing your schoolwork because your teachers have always said that you weren't smart. But you know that you're smart. So you're still going to push forward and prove them wrong because you are
Mm-hmm.
resilient. You know what resiliency is. And you're going to say, no, I'm getting over this mountain. No,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get this done. And
Mm-hmm.
so the idea is that you really determine how you get to choose. Like I know that sometimes it feels like for kids like no, I just have to take anything or I have to do this because such and such said, but my feelings don't matter or I don't matter or people can treat me anyway. And I want them to know that it is never right for people to treat you wrong, whether it's because you made a mistake, whether it's because you're of the color of your skin, whether it's because whatever the reason is, like there is never a reason for someone to treat you in a way that you don't feel comfortable being treated. Like you deserve to be treated the best all the time, like you're royalty
Mm-hmm.
because you are. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was just wanting them to understand that you get to choose. Respect
Yes.
is not negotiable.
Mm.
Respect is the bare minimum, and you deserve that regardless of what you've done, regardless of the color of your skin, your gender, like any of those things. You are worthy and you deserve to be respected. If people can't respect you and that be the minimum, then they don't deserve to be in your presence. And that could be a teacher, that could be a principal, that can be a family member, friends, like anyone. And as you grow
Mm-hmm.
and you get the opportunity, like when you're smaller, yeah, you don't necessarily get to choose.
Mm-hmm.
But as you get older, you do get to choose
Right.
who you allow
Absolutely.
around you and whether you're respected or not.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you have a second book out now called
I
Anise
do.
Keeps Calm.
Yes.
Please share what that is about with our listeners.
A Niece Keeps Calm is a children's book, of course, featuring Nova. So Nova has two middle names. So her full name is Nova Janae Anise Caraway. So of
Mm-hmm.
course, my baby is the main character.
Uh-huh.
And so most of her books from here on out are going to have the character Anise and doing different things. And so this book is about a time when she goes to the park with her dad and she gets lost at the park and
Mm-hmm.
she freaks out like any other kid, right? And
Right.
so there were some hidden messages in this book as well. So my main thing, of course, was to teach kids healthy ways to keep calm, healthy ways to cope with big feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, to acknowledge that kids do have big feelings, and us as parents need
Right.
to recognize that kids have feelings. Because parents
Mm-hmm.
like to say, what do you have to feel sad about or mad about? You don't pay
Mm-hmm.
bills. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have any responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
And it's getting so it's like twofold. So I want the kids to learn how to keep calm and manage their emotions in healthy ways, but I
Mm-hmm.
want parents to be able to not, to also help their child learn how to manage their emotions. But first, the parent then has to manage their emotions first, right? So it starts that conversation about emotions, coping skills. Get your parent kind of like, oh, my kid is over there deep breathing right now. But when I got mad, that's not what I did, right? And so hopefully the conversation will then change to like, oh, let me start to do some of my inner work, and things like that. So that was part of the idea. So Anise gets lost in the park with dad. She's running around playing, not paying attention, which Nova does often. And she freaks out. So she goes through sadness. She goes through some anger because now she can't find dad, and now I'm scared. I'm just like all these different emotions. I'm scared. I'm sad. I'm lonely. Like I am angry now because why did I run away from my dad and I wasn't paying attention? And so all these emotions come up, and so through the story, she's processing her emotions. So she starts with like trying to calm herself down by talking to herself. So she's using what we call positive self-talk. So she's telling herself, I'm okay. I can do this. And then at one point of the book, she like starts doing some imagery, which is where you imagine that you're in a safe space, whatever your safe place looks like. So for some people, it can be on the ocean or in the woods or hiking or whatever that is. And she goes through like a series of coping skills. And then finally, when she's finally calming down, she finds her dad. And then dad expresses that he's just glad to have reunited with her and blah, blah, blah. And so it turns out that her mom, me, has taught her all these coping tools. And she says how helpful they are. And so at the end, she says a note to her readers, and she's kind of like, if you have any big feelings, blah, 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 this is the way that you can handle those feelings. And it kind of breaks down the different coping mechanisms throughout the book. And then the other part of the story that I wanted kids to realize is we don't want to be lost from our parents. It's not a fun feeling. We need to pay attention to our surroundings and keep up with our parents so that we don't end up having these big emotions. So it was kind of twofold. It was to teach them emotions, but also to teach them, like, it's not fun to get lost. Like, we want to pay attention and always keep up with your parents so you're not in that situation kind of thing. And this book is also close to my heart because I am such a therapist at heart. I just love all things like mental health. And Nova actually deep breathes. So she's been doing deep breathing since she was 1.5. Probably 1.5, 2. Probably 2, because I think from 1 to 2 is when we were working it out, because Nova had some massive tantrums. It's her way or the highway. And so mom, yes. So mom, also known as me, was like, wait a second. Other people are like, well, she can't fall out in the middle of public. Like, you're not going to do anything about that? And I'm like, what do you want me to do about it? Like, she's upset. Right. I'm going to let her handle that, get her emotions together, and that's what she needs to do right now. So, of course, the old school people are like, well, you should pop her or you should discipline her. And I'm like, we'll have a conversation, but she's 2. Like, I don't, that's not necessary, right? And so my solution was frowned upon by a lot of people, but my solution was, hey, let's breathe. And we did it, and we breathe in and we count. She'll hold it, breathe out, do it 3 times, and we're good. And then she'll even come to me and say, Mom, I need to breathe. I need to be calm. And so it's been a lifesaver. Last night, actually, she was having a meltdown, and my friend was on the phone with me, and she has 2 daughters of her own. And she's like, and Nova is just like freaking out, and I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm just like, why are we here? Right? So I'm like, hey, I really think, yes, that's exactly, well, how did we get here? Because we were fine. Yes. And so she's freaking out, and I'm on the phone, and I'm like, I think you need to breathe. Like, I think you need to go breathe. And she's like, can you breathe with me? So I say, okay. So we breathe 3 times. Are you calm? Yes. And she's wiping her tears, and we're good. And my friend's like, how did you do that?
What kind of sorcery is this?
Yes. She's like, how did you do that? Can you come teach my kids that? And I was like, it took a year. Like, it wasn't magic. We've been working this out. Like, we have been working on this. So, yes. So, like, I wanted to share that. Exactly. She was so surprised, and I was like, hey, it takes practice. It took patience and practice. Like, a lot of patience, a lot of conversations, a lot of practice. So, I wanted to share some of those tips and techniques with other parents who struggle, because kids have big emotions and they don't know why. Right. And sometimes they just need you to help them calm down. Instead of yelling or instead of spanking or whatever else, other kinds of discipline, sometimes they really just need to be heard, and for them to know that their feelings matter, and for you to help them, show them how to calm down, because they don't know how. So my daughter will say all the time, I want to stop crying. I want to stop crying. And I'm like, aww, can you just stop crying? Like, I'm confused. And she's like, but I just want to stop crying. And I'm like, okay,
But
all
you
right.
can't. All right.
Right. Yeah. So I'm like, all right.
But
And
that's
that's
a big
also what led
feeling
to the
because when
freedom.
we have issues,
Uh-huh.
we want to stop crying, but we can't. It
Exactly.
just keeps coming.
And I think to hear her verbalize it is just like, what do you say to this? Even the therapist
Right.
in me is like, all right, what do we need to do? Like, what do you need
Right.
to do right
Like,
now?
I'm at a loss.
Right. Definitely at a loss. Like, what do you need? So now she says, I need to breathe. And I'm like, oh, okay, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we are.
Okay, let's breathe.
Yes, let's breathe. So, yes.
So you mentioned her before, but I wanted to talk about the illustrations in this book are really so beautiful. So I wanted you to tell us about your illustrator.
So I actually found my illustrator in a Facebook group. I'm in a bunch of like author illustrator Facebook groups.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody highly recommended her, said she was easy to work with, great to work with. I think she's located in the Philippines, so she's not local.
Mm-hmm.
But it was such a smooth process. So a little bit about like if anybody's curious about the illustration process. It is with my illustrator, it was like smooth, but it can be very difficult if you've never done it before. So I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough. So basically,
Okay.
what happens is like I wrote the book, I wrote the words, and had it edited, blah blah blah, and then found my illustrator and I said, hey, this is the book, this is what it's about, these are the words,
Mm-hmm.
and then she basically asked for what I wanted the illustrations to look for. But
Mm-hmm.
so what that meant, so people are always like, did you make the illustrations? And I'm like, no, I didn't draw them, but
Uh-huh.
basically like all of it is my idea, right? So like from A through Z, I literally had to come up with a scenario and an
Mm-hmm.
image that I wanted to represent. So they're
Mm-hmm.
literally all my ideas. And
Wow.
so I had to go down to like what I wanted the little bubbles to say. So like when she said, "Can I have a hug?" and she said no, and then like what they
Mm-hmm.
were wearing, like all the things. I had to pick character
Mm-hmm.
what I wanted the character to look like. So I sent a picture of Nova, and then we tweaked it a couple times until I got it where I wanted it, right? And so the same with the illustration. So I come up with like, this is what I want it to look like, and they call it a storyboard where you come up with like images and things that you want it to look like. And so I did that, and then I described like in words what I wanted the pictures to look like, and then she'd draw them, bring it back, and say, "Hey, what do you think?" And we tweaked them a couple times. Then she played with the colors. She did great with the colors, so I didn't really have any problems. Loved the way that she colored everything in, and so it was.
Mm-hmm.
But it was super easy because once we went through like um that piece, the hardest part was coming up with like what exactly you want on 26 pages of a book. That took me forever. I was like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to start because you want it to be fun and colorful, but you also want parents to be like, oh, and to chuckle a little bit or to like keep people engaged and all the things. And so I really had to brainstorm like, what do I say for honest? What do I say for this one? What does this one mean to me? And it went back to like, that's why it's easy to talk about like how I came up with them for each of the words because
Mm-hmm.
like magic is actually one of my favorite pages. I am magic. And so I chose the word magic because I think that we as African Americans are magical people. We've been through so
Absolutely.
much. We've been
Mm-hmm.
through so much, but we still shine so much light. Like we are educated. We are, even though they never wanted us to be educated, we are one of the
Mm-hmm.
most educated groups of people right now.
Yep.
We are super successful now, despite everything that we've gone through. So I just feel like we're just magical. Like the way we can wear our hair, the way we dress, like our music, just all our culture in general is magical. And people try to take that away from us, especially as kids. So I wanted kids to know now you're magic. And so in the I think the one for magic is like mountains move when I say so. And so I wanted kids to know that you are magic. You have the power to overcome any of these things, but you got to want it. You got to speak it, you got to want it, and you got to make it happen. And you are magical enough to do that. And so, like, my illustration for magic was literally like me, like, the words. Okay, so you're just going to move a mountain. You're going to show them how magical you are. The mountain is going to divide, right? And so it was just a lot of fun and a lot of work to come up with the things. And I also use things that Nova loves. So like there's a lion in the book because that's like her favorite thing. Um, there's all these just different things that she loves that are, I'm trying to think, because I do not have my book in front of me, guys. I'm a hot mess, so I'm trying to picture it in my head. Because I've read this book a million times, so I'm trying to picture all the pages.
Right.
But yes, shout out to my illustrator again. She has been awesome. She's amazing. She actually made that's the illustrator for my second book. Actually, Maru's the illustrator for my second book. Okay. So my first illustrator, I did not have contact with. So that book the first book wasn't self-published. So the first book, Loving Me ABCs, was through a small publisher. So it was a lady that I met on Facebook. She publishes books for a couple of people. And so she actually worked with the illustrator directly, and I didn't work with the illustrator. Sorry, guys. But Maru is the illustrator for my second book.
For A Niece Keeps Calm.
A Niece Keeps Calm, yes. So the illustrator process I described was for her. So she did all those things. But for the first book, I did have to go through and still do like the storyboard and come up with all those images and like what I wanted it to be like. So the process is pretty much the same. I just didn't have direct contact with the illustrator for the first book. But it still came out like I wanted it to, so I was happy about that.
Well, that's great. So now you chose to self-publish for your second book?
Yes.
Okay, so share with us your reasoning behind that.
Honestly, the money, it cost a lot the first time around, and I don't think that it should have, or it could have cost a lot less, right? And I'm also someone that I know that I want this to be a brand that has multiple books, and so I'm all about like what makes sense, right? So it makes sense for me to learn this skill, and also this is a business for Nova, so that I build generational wealth, and hopefully it sends her to college and all the things. And so my hope is to start doing consulting and helping other people who want to write children's books get into the children's book industry and learn the ins and the outs. And so first I have to do it. And so I was just like, this doesn't, and honestly, this book came out of nowhere. So it was like one day I just started writing it and was like, oh, this is a good idea. And then I finished it in like a day and I was like, oh, I wonder if I can find an editor. And then I found an editor super easy, and she edited it in like 2 days. And I was like, oh, that was easy. And then I was like, I really like this book. Maybe I can publish it before her second birthday, because Love a Niece was launched on her second birthday. And so I wanted to publish this one on her by her third birthday, the second book. And so I was like, okay. So once the editor did their thing, and I was like, I really like this book. I let my sister and a couple of people read it, and they were like, I really like this. I was like, hey, let me see if I can get it illustrated in. We're on to the next part. So then it was just flowed really well, and it was easy. And so I found my illustrator, and that's when I did like the storybook part and all those things, and everything just kind of took off from there. So it's a very seamless process, but you just have to know the ins and the outs, the connections, have all of the information you need. I also am in a lot of publishing groups on Facebook. I've done research, webinars, like all the things. And so they tell you like the do's, the don'ts. Like it's really, one tip is like, it's super important to buy your own ISBNs and not use the ISBNs that KDP or Ingram has, because then you can sell it anywhere, right? And so just like certain things that are not public knowledge that I can help, or Love a Niece can help other people with, so that they're not wasting money and so that they're being successful and all the things that they want to do. And so that was a super important tip with self-publishing. Also, not paying an illustrator up front is super important. Like you never want to pay an illustrator all up front. My illustrator was awesome. She did like a payment sort of thing, and after she completed certain steps, I'd pay for certain parts, and that worked amazing. Also, there are coloring pages for Loving Me ABC. So there's coloring pages that go with the book. Kids love those coloring pages as well. And so A Niece Keeps Calm actually comes with has a coloring book that the illustrator did, and it's a coloring activity book. And it has it has fun emotion activities about emotions and identifying emotions, matching them. Draw how you feel today. draw when you're happy, and then talk about when you're happy, or things like that. And then it has like the coloring pages in between, so it's a pretty cool book.
Mm-hmm.
Nova approved. So when she got that copy, she was like, "Oh, I love this," and I was like, "Look at that, mom win again, right?" And so that was awesome. But yes, and then we also have a positive affirmations deck of cards that I've created,
Mm-hmm.
and they start conversations about the positive affirmations. So it's like, what, name a time you were assertive. So I'm a therapist, so of course
Mm-hmm.
therapy-ish games, or games that just are great
Right,
for
right.
teachers or parents to talk to their kids about. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
want to spark conversations about like and really see or test their knowledge of the words or whatever it is, and like how they feel about certain
Right.
things, they're really useful for that too. So I just want to create things with our faces on it that kids may or may not have
Mm-hmm.
seen before, and that are going to educate
Right.
them and make sure that they're learning and reading and growing.
Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't be able to do that the way that you wanted to if you were doing traditional publishing. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what's next for you now that this second book has come out?
Um, that is a heavy question. um, I think, of course, more books. I don't know the time frame because Mama's tired and
Right.
trying to get it together right now. But possibly within the next year or so, I'd like to do like another kind of mental health book. Um, Definitely more books, a journal, hopefully in the future, a kid's journal, um, some other kind of like educational tools. I'd like to come up with a coping tool bag. So the Anise Keeps Calm has the whole throughout the book she's carrying her coping tool bag, which has all her coping school
Mm-hmm.
tools in it, but they're not like physical things. But it's just the
Right.
idea of like having your coping tools in there. But I want to make a physical like coping tool box with like just different
Mm-hmm.
coping tools in there that people can buy for their kiddos, and things like that. But definitely probably about to do a lot more like pop-up shops and things like that to get some exposure, and some book signings for our new book. I have been swamped with my full-time job lately, and so we haven't done as many book signings as we've done for the first one. So definitely this summer we plan to get out there and like things. She's all about it. So that's definitely what the plan is. But you will definitely be seeing and hearing more from
Mm-hmm.
Love Anise,
Okay.
and seeing my baby around all over the place.
Okay. So are you gonna let her write a book or co-write a book with her at some point?
Of course, that is the plan. She Nova
Okay.
has a say in a lot of the books that we do. She's just a little, so she's like, I don't know what you're talking about, mom, but okay. Um, and so sometimes I'll be like, do you like this picture or do you like this? And she's like, yeah, that's so pretty or that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so yes, definitely, probably as she's Nova's very advanced, and so probably by the time she's 4, she'll probably have a lot to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's probably around when we'll start to let her like, hey, what do you want to talk about, or what do you want to
Right.
tell them about, right?
Okay.
Um, I'm pretty sure she wants to write a princess book. So we'll probably end up writing some kind of princess book or something like that. Um,
Okay.
or a dance book. She's obsessed with dance, so we may write a dance book. Who knows?
Okay.
But definitely, the plan is to co-write as she gets older. She'll also start like handling more of her stuff. Like, you sign these books, or you handle that piece, right? And Mama will just be like there to manage and see all the things. But
Right.
definitely, the plan is to get her as involved as possible. She goes to book signings with me. We did a mommy and me photo shoot, and plan to do another one. She's super involved in the business. She'll help me package stuff up. She'll help me paint certain stuff sometimes. So we used to make bookmarks, and paint them and decorate them. And so she'd help with that to a certain extent because, she's 3.
Right.
She goes to the post office to do drop offs with me, all the things. So she's
Okay.
definitely super involved, and I hope she'll be more involved in the future.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So, where can readers find your books?
Okay. So you can find my books at love Anise, ANISE,
Mm-hmm.
my Shopify, SHOPIFY.com.
Okay.
And so that's love Anise.myshopify.com. And
And
if you
from
want to,
and for
uh-huh,
listeners, that will be on the website, so we'll have all the
yes,
links there.
awesome. And then if you want to follow her business on Instagram, it's love Anise, LLC. And so that's
Okay.
Love a Niece LLC. We post on there a lot. You'll see her. You'll see kids who have bought the books. There will be reviews, like all the things. Keep up with like what's going on with Love a Niece, where we're at. We post pictures and videos from our book signings and all the fun stuff.
Okay.
Sometimes Nova will have pictures or videos of her being creative or of her being talented or whatever it is. And other kids too. So like if any of my friends like let us post their kids doing any of the affirmations, like we'll post those too. And so there's always fun stuff on there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have come to the end of our show for today. I want to thank you so much for being here with us, sharing your time and your talents with us today.
Well, thank you so much, and I apologize for the struggles of the day.
Listen, it happens. It happens. It happens more than you would know, but we made it through. We got audio, and this just gives me an opportunity to just create some cool video for the YouTube channel. So
awesome.
I'll think of some cool graphics. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I can't wait
so
to watch.
much for being here. Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. And Booze and Bros, you know how I do. You know what time it is. Today's quote comes from Dr. Mae Jemison, the first Black woman to travel into space. And she says, "Don't let anyone rob you of your imagination, your creativity, or your curiosity. It's your place in the world. It's your life. Go on and do all you can with it and make it the life you want to live." Until next time, y'all, you know what to do. Grab a book and read. And I'm out. Thanks for lending me your ear today. If you enjoyed this content, please head over to BetweenTheReads.com and leave a rating for the show. While you're there, consider supporting this independent podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/BetweenTheReads. Join us next week for another great episode.